Hello. Hey, okay. So today I'm going to give you a brief overview of Colony as a governance platform, and I'm going to try to give a bit of a different view of the whole thing today, because this is a governance platform. I want to not dive into the structure of voting and who gets to vote and all the little minutiae of that, and talk more big picture of what governance really means, and particular, well, I want to talk about how our norms and values play into how we govern our organization. So Colony itself is not a monolithic project. There's a lot of different parts, and it's supposed to be a toolkit to build your own decentralized organization, however way you like. Governance, well, so what exactly is governance? I want to say it's not just procedure, and there's a lot of talk about voting and who gets to vote and what's the quorum requirement and who gets to make a proposal and what happens when it gets accepted and what transactions have to be and so on and so forth. Now that all has its place, but so do norms, so does culture, so do values, and I know it's a very controversial thing to say in the blockchain space, but I think people matter. So the reason I say it's controversial, I mean, it's the following. When we talk about governance on blockchain, what's so great we can use the blockchain is that we can absolutely dictatorially enforce procedure. And that's what the blockchain gives us. If you code that, if whenever the full moon falls and every third Thursday of a month we have to have a new leadership election, if that's in your smart contract, that will happen, and you can't stop that. So this absolute enforcing of procedures, that's the new tool, that's what we can enforce. And it's very useful. I'm not, there we go. Okay, it's impossible to reason about people per se. You know, especially in a decentralized context, if we don't have a good identity system yet, and identity is hard, you can reason about user accounts, but it's very hard. You can't do a one person, one vote kind of situation because you don't know what a person is, and if one person can make 1 million accounts, well then that is a useless metric. So it's hard to reason about people, and yet it's people who enforce norms and values in an organization, and I want to kind of talk about how to bridge that gap or what that even means. So how these tools of the blockchain interact with the users of the blockchain to produce the organization that you want. Alright, so before I jump in and give you a little bit of procedure, when I normally start this talk, I start very differently. I give a big overview. I start with saying something like, hey, what is Colony? Then drop some nice words about collaboration and cooperation, you know, wonderful ideas. I drop some buzzwords saying self-governance with no strict hierarchy, unbureaucratic, meritocratic, all great. And then I say something like, well, the goal is to have the whole world come together and make big projects reality, like even a mission to the moon, get some engineers, some financiers, some designers all coming together to work on a big project and to harness this power. You know, the same, I don't know about you, I'm still amazed that something like Wikipedia exists, right? It's just like when it started, the idea was so ridiculous and the website anyone could edit, who would want to put in the work? And we realized there's a lot of people in the world who just like helping. And you can get really great things, but what we're missing right now is a way to collectively manage funds and manage people's time and keep account of all of that. And maybe that's just the missing ingredient to take that collaboration idea to the next level. So that's kind of the goal we want to look at. So with that big picture in mind, let's go into the very small, tiny, zooming in. The smallest little bit in our colony is a little piece of work, we call it a task. Like we have to break things down. So the smallest thing is a task. One unit of work that you might be able to do in an afternoon or a day or two, nothing too big. So what is a task? Well, a task is one of these things. That's a smart contract. And it needs a few things. It needs an administrator. It's the person who creates the task. You know, someone has to do it. There's information in there, what the work is, what's the due date, a bunch of metadata, you know, what we expect, you know, which beach to clean up, if that's what we're doing. There's an evaluator, so we're going to say in advance who's going to be the guy who says if the work is done or not. So, you know, if you're asking someone to code JavaScript, maybe your senior JavaScript developer will have to approve the pull request, and that's the evaluator. Then there's a bounty, so the funds are locked in the smart contract. Of course, that's the nice thing about Ethereum, the funds are programmable and they can be held in escrow by the contract itself. You don't need a third party for that. And then there's going to be a worker, somebody who does the task. Now, and this could all be the same person, right? So don't think of these as different people. It's just those are the different roles that are encoded in a task. And that's the smallest piece. Okay, so what is the procedure for dealing with one of these tasks? Yeah, what needs to be done for that to happen? So first of all, you must create a task and assign an admin, as you yourself. Then you apply for budget, you say what the work is, and then you assign who's going to do the evaluating and who's going to do the work. And then a little while later, the work gets submitted and evaluated, and the task gets paid out. So that's the procedure. I mean, that's literally what has to happen, so that's the procedure. And note, there's nothing in here about asking for permission and submitting a proposal and waiting for a vote and whether you're allowed to have the task and all of this bureaucratic, there's none of that. And yeah, it's really important because when you want to run your company, your group, your work team, or whatever, you don't want to have to vote on everything. Bureaucracy is really slow and cumbersome. And I come from academia, and I've spent many days on student parliament to know how awful it is when everything goes through these procedural motions. So there's none of that. In Colony, you should be able to just get things done as long as there's a general consensus to do so. And I'm going to talk about what general consensus means. But it's important that when people are in agreement that it should be fluid and easy to get things done. Yeah, so the idea is it should be really easy to do things when there's an agreement. You shouldn't have to go through procedural hoops. On the other hand, the procedural hoops should be there in case you need them to protect you against bad actors. In a decentralized space, you have to always assume the worst and protect against it. And so the balance between those two is that's a really important issue for Colony. I'm going to talk about that more. So all things in Colony are based on reputation. Reputation is kind of the weighting we give to different people, their ability to do things and to shape what happens. Generally you get reputation when you do good, you lose reputation when you do bad, and reputation is all that counts when you're making decisions. So what is good and what is bad? Well, it's a whole other talk, but that's the general idea. Okay, so suppose you have a task, give a talk in Lugano for Ethfinex, it's a totally hypothetical example, and then you do the task, and then you submit a proof, a video link to the evaluator says, yep, great task, wonderful. It gets completed, you claim your payout, you get paid, you're done. When that happens, you also get reputation. Because you've done some work for the Colony, that gets reflected in the reputation. And it's not just reputation in abstract, I get reputation in maybe our governance working group and in the reputation, the skill of public speaking. Right? And this reputation that you get, that's stuck to your account. It's not like token-weighted voting or something where tokens can be bought and sold and you can buy your voting weight. In a Colony, you can only earn it by doing work. And the people who consistently do good work, they get more reputation. Any tokens they get, they can sell. The reputation, that's stuck to you. So let me go into this. What does this mean, this governance working group and public speaking skill? Because, so far I've only talked about tasks. So let's go back a little bit and talk about Colony structure. So this is a page from our white paper. It shows that a Colony can be divided into, we call them domains, and domains into subdomains. So in our example, we've got Colony domain, development, back-end, front-end, Node.js, Ruby, whatever, some kind of a structure that can be dynamically generated. You can constantly generate new domains for different projects or working groups or even individuals. So it's very flexible, it's a very modular structure. And the idea is that having such a tree of domains, and each of these domains has their own budget, and budgets generally flow down. So like the general Colony would decide to allocate budget to the development department, and the development department could siphon off some funds to their JavaScript subdomain. And then within different domains are where the tasks live, and the bounties get assigned to the tasks. So it has to grow this way because otherwise the managerial overhead for a large organization would simply be too much. You can't have everyone deciding on everything all the time. So that's sort of the general hierarchy. And the idea is that most of the decisions, the day-to-day operations happen in the smallest domains, very locally. And all the decision-making should happen locally. You want the smallest group possible to decide on things. If fight amongst, or disagreement amongst the JavaScript developers, they should first hash it out before they ask everyone else. And the reputation, when I said like we might have a communications department and government, in that I have public speaking, the work group of people who go out and give speeches, maybe that's where my task was, and that's where I got the reputation, so it stays local. So, where are decisions made? I really want to say, oh, within the domains, but let's be serious, that makes no sense. Where are decisions really made? Right? They're really made on Skype and Hangouts and Twitter and conferences, and we talk to each other. It has nothing to do with the blockchain. I can talk about voting and decisions on the blockchain, but that's not really a decision-making procedure. Voting is just a way to record a decision that's already been made. So let's not confuse the two. This is where decisions happen. So in our colony, when I create a task, I will always create it in the relevant domain, subdomain. And you can assume that we've already talked about it in our weekly meeting and agreed that I was going to make this task and assign myself and do all that, because that's just how we agreed to do things in our colony. It's not enforced by the smart contract, but that's our norm. To be fair, there is a bias towards these two, because those are really important rules to have, and I'll explain why we're biased towards doing it this way. But the idea is that I'm going to tell the others in my weekly call, hey, I'm going to Lugano and give this talk, and everyone's agreed. And then I do the bookkeeping, I go to Connie, say create task, assign myself as admin and worker, and this is my payout, and this is what I'm going to do. People can see that happening. But nobody needs to object, nobody needs to vote. It should be really easy. We've already agreed. So that's great. So all decision making should be within the domain. Don't ask Java developers about design. They're terrible at design. Ask your design domain. And the other one, yes, all decisions should already have been made before we go to the blockchain, because blockchains are really expensive and slow. Okay, so what happens when we disagree? Every one of these decisions can be forced to go on an on-chain vote. Right? That's a security backstop. In a decentralized space, you have to be able to record on-chain what the actual decision is. And if people start messing around, somebody has to come and say, okay, nope, this is not what we agreed to, and I'm going to prove it to you, we're going to have a vote. So all decisions can be forced to vote, and the voting is the ultimate arbiter of anything happening in a colony, but the incentives are aligned so that you never want to vote unless you don't want to have spurious voting. Like, you're not going to try to move things your way if you're going to, you're going to lose the vote. Incentives are aligned against that, so try to keep things flowing smoothly. Actually, I'll get back to this later. So, disputes. This is how you force a vote. Right? You want to balance two things. It should be easy to do things, and it should be hard to cheat. That's what I mentioned earlier. Easy to do things means unbureaucratic and nice. When you have agreement, you don't need to ask for permission. And it should be hard to cheat, so you don't want somebody to be able to create a task that pays out $1 million, assign themselves, claim the payout, and run. So that should be hard. So that means whenever you do something in a colony, you need to have reputation at stake and tokens. You need to have something that you can lose if you're found to be behaving badly. And everything must go really slowly, so that when I have a task and say, hey, I should be paid out, there's actually a 3-day delay. And during that 3-day delay is when my peers can see that I'm doing something bad and trigger. Like, everything runs slowly. And usually you can speed things up if you have more reputation backing it, but in general, there has to be a security delay for people to jump in and force votes. That's the security model. Yeah, so anyone with enough reputation can object to an action, and it doesn't mean that somebody's doing something bad. It could just be an accident, like, hey, this task is a duplicate of the other, let's delete one. And that's fine. As soon as it's been marked, if nobody else objects to the objection, then that's going to happen. And it's only when somebody jumps in and says, no, this is right, and I stake my reputation on the other side, that's when you have a dispute, people who disagree. And at that point, you have to have a vote. And it's a reputation-weighted vote, and it's the reputation within the group, within the domain, within the skill, as small as possible, the smallest number of people to get things done. Right? You can escalate things to a higher domain. If you think that your work group is really not following the rules and cheating you, you can force things up to a higher level. Well, there's no higher boss, so there's a bigger group of people. But you really only want to do that if you're sure you're going to win. And because you don't want anyone to just, oh, what the hell, let me try anyway, I might win, that's bad, that's going to, it's cognitively a lot of work to have votes, so let's keep them to a minimum. So the reputation system governs the incentives for these disputes, that's what I'm trying to get at here. So locally within work groups, yes, I've mentioned that. So first of all, you might have a dispute down here in our JavaScript domain, and and those are the only people who need to deal with a dispute. If they can resolve it amongst themselves, fine, the rest of us never need to care. Disputes can be escalated to a higher domain, but at extra cost. So if somebody is being voted down in this JavaScript domain and thinks this is not fair, this is actually not how things are supposed to go, or maybe the reputation's gotten too imbalanced in this group because it's a small group and imbalances can happen, you can put up reputation at stake to move the decision one level up. But there's more at stake and there's more to lose if you lose that objection, because we really don't want you to inconvenience all these people by constantly voting. So there are risks involved, right? So you're incentivized to keep escalating only if you think you're going to win. And yeah, the reputation system is what governs these disputes. And there's one particular twist in the costs and benefits of disputes that I want to highlight. But let me jump quickly in what reputation means. And then you earn reputation by doing good things and lose it by doing bad things, I've already said. Good things are completing work and managing and evaluating work and those kind of things. Bad things are losing disputes, people saying you cheated, or just by doing nothing. So there's a reputation decay, which is a very important topic, but I won't actually talk about that much today. So the reputation rewards and the penalties, they are what really governs the incentives and what you're likely to do. And this is important. If you raise a dispute, saying, hey, this is wrong, and then the vote goes against you 90 to 10, then you lose your entire stake that you put up for even causing that vote. Because you should have known that it was going to go against you, because you're supposed to talk to each other. You have communications. We have no shortage of communications channels, from Telegram to Slack to Hangouts to Skype to whatever. Like, that's not what we need the blockchain for. So you just caused everyone a nuisance and you lost your stake. But if you forced a vote and it went against you 51 to 49, we're only going to penalize you 10% of that stake. Because maybe it was a good idea to go for a vote because it wasn't so clear. So with that kind of an incentive structure, you kind of see that you will never just frivolously call votes if you're going to lose. Because if people constantly do that, they will lose their stake, they will lose reputation, and over a while they will lose their ability to do anything. So if people abuse the system, they will automatically get voted out over time. Yeah, reputation decay. I said I'm not going to talk too much about it, but we want reputation to keep refreshing. So if you're constantly doing work, you're constantly earning reputation, time passes, you're constantly losing reputation, so there should be a healthy balance so that newcomers can come in and, over time they work their way up to being full members, and there's no difference. Okay, so enforcing decisions, I said, voting is the ultimate arbiter, and this is the incentives are ranged against unnecessary voting, as I've already said, and reputation is what makes all of this. So that's how disputes work, but that's just implied, because most of the time there won't be an on-chain vote, there won't be a dispute, hopefully. Hopefully within the organization you can agree to actually talk beforehand. The point is, if we have a norm that I'm not allowed to create a task that we didn't talk about beforehand in our weekly meeting, as long as I have a credible belief that you're all going to enforce it, I'm disincentivized from even trying, because it's going to cost me and I'm going to lose reputation, lose influence. So the interplay here between what you expect people to do and what you do on-chain, it's subtle, but it's important. And the real key in all of this, what we're trying to do, is make it easy to get stuff done. Because in so many of these governance projects on the blockchain, far too much emphasis is being put on putting up proposals and waiting for quorum of votes and counting votes and evaluating. That's not how you get stuff done on a day-to-day basis. Maybe a boardroom can be emulated that way, but not your day-to-day work. All right, so Colony is highly modular. You can break big projects into small projects, into work groups, into these domains, and it's designed to make it easy to create domains, to create tasks, to get stuff done, and it's the dispute system is there in the background in case you need it. It protects you against bad actors, and it also allows you to enforce your own norms and values. Depending on, that's up to you. It's flexible enough. So when you're actually interacting with this, there's going to be a dApp, not yet released, but a full, real dApp, no servers, that makes it really easy to interact with the Colony protocol, the smart contracts. This does tasks and and bounties and keeping track of who does what. Well, this makes it really easy to interact with the projects and start your own. Beyond that, all of the code is open source and very modular. So, for example, our colony.js JavaScript library makes it easy to integrate various aspects of this task management system into any other web app, or you can make your own twists on the dispute resolution, or so it's very flexible. And we encourage anyone to jump in and develop with Colony. It's meant to be all the building blocks for it now. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. And while this has not been released, it's very, very, very soon all coming. The contracts are out, the JavaScript library is out, and our product is about to be launched. And we'd love it if you come play with it, come talk to us. And yeah, I'm always ready for feedback. So thank you very much.
Questions? Do we have another mic? Yeah.
I can show it.
No, it's for the online, I think, the mic.
I just want to come back to your reputation system. I see it's quite fundamental to the platform. So who ultimately is the decision maker on the reputation? And secondly, what sort of attack vectors is that open to? Is there a theory of 51% attacking withholding tokens to basically maliciously attack the reputation up or down for certain users?
So reputation gets earned by, essentially it's a measure of how much work you do in a colony, how many tasks you get paid out for. And it is possible that some colonies will fail and the reputation system goes completely lopsided so that somebody has a dictatorial control. It's certainly within the possibility of what the scheme allows. So I'm not saying it's automatically well balanced, but we hope that it should be, especially if you really, if your colony is working well, so there's several active contributors all doing work repeatedly over time, the reputation does tend to get smoothed out over all these different people. But there's no inbuilt guarantee that it cannot be lopsided. So if you have a large colony, it's far more likely that you get really these lopsided 51% attacks possible within like a really small subdomain, right? Maybe your lead C++ developer is like 80% of the reputation in that domain and he can be a dictator. But if he does things that the general colony wouldn't like, anyone down there has the ability to escalate upwards, and then higher up he does not have such a high level of reputation anymore because it's balanced across all the departments.
So the reputation that he gains, let's say the C++ developer, who ultimately decides if he did a good job or not?
Oh, so well, for every single task, every task has its own criteria of who gets to evaluate it, right? So maybe I say, within our team here, a coding task has to be, it's a pull request which has to be accepted by one of these three lead devs who will accept or reject. If they say it's accepted, then you get the reputation for that task. However, there's also a delay in that, so if you think somebody's abusing that, just falsely saying accept to something that hasn't actually done any work, then you can force an escalation and force a dispute and force it to a vote. Like, these things work well when you guys work well together, and when they don't work well together, you can force votes, and maybe you can flush out bad actors, but no colony is ever going to work if everything is constantly being disputed and you just end up in this bureaucratic hellhole. But that's a balance we're trying to strike. So certainly nobody can unilaterally avoid reputation because everything is subject to the dispute system. Yeah, that's kind of how it works. Yeah.
I'll wait for the mic. When you create a new colony, you have the situation that you have a small group of people coming early, they can build a reputation, they know each other, and then you have the situation that people which join late have a huge gap in reputation. Is there anything you plan that you, for example, lose reputation over time to balance out early mover advantages over people which come later, because they will never gain the same reputation?
Absolutely. Now that's an important one. So this whole idea of reputation decay, which I only briefly mentioned, is all about any reputation you earn is subject to decay over time. So that even if you earn a whole lot when the colony first starts, if you stop working for it, if you stop contributing, or even keep contributing, and it just will normalize over time, and you kind of have a measure of the work that's been done within the last 3 months, 6 months, or a year, but not 5 years ago. So yeah, that was a very important one, and also because the value of your token might fluctuate, and the value of reputation points kind of fluctuates with token price, so it makes it hard to compare over a long period of time. So yes, it's supposed to continuously keep renewing. Yeah, we don't want, we call it the reputation aristocracy. So, you know, you couldn't get 1 million points and then coast on that forever, because they will decay away like everything else.
Great. Right.
So when setting up a colony, do you have a lot of parameters that you can adjust, or what parameters can you adjust? What's by default, or what's you can't change?
Well, so you can, when you create a colony, create the number of tokens you're going to have to start with, and a few parameters. So one of the things you can do at the beginning is set an initial distribution of reputation, and that is the only time you can ever just assign reputation to accounts. And after that's done, it just all runs according to the rules. Things like token issuance and minting new tokens, that can be changed afterwards if you have, but that requires a whole colony-wide vote of both reputation and token weighting, so a double majority before anything like that can be done. Yeah, but reputation gets set at the beginning and that's it. Apart from that, not that much has to be set at the beginning, because all colonies should be able to evolve dynamically, so the structure of domains, subdomains, all that kind of stuff should be able to fluidly develop. Yeah, so that's pretty much all we have to do to start off. Yeah, Mata. What do you say?
Can you say something about the quora for the on-chain governance? What's the numbers, or what determines the quora, what dynamics?
Yeah, that's a good question. Quorum. So quorum in these cases is not a number of votes, but a proportion of the relevant reputation that has to be queried. I don't know them off the top of my head. I know that they get higher. It gets harder or higher up in the hierarchy. The quorum requirements are bigger, so you need to have a bigger proportion of the relevant reputation voting on something.
But is it fixed? Is these fixed numbers, or they have some dynamics in them?
They're fixed proportions.
Yeah, fixed proportions.
Fixed proportions at first, yes. We'll have to. So there's a lot of parameters that we came up with that are untested, and we'll have to see how they develop in the wild. So one of the things we're really excited about after launch is really looking at colonies as they evolve and seeing which ones fail and which ones work, and then maybe adjusting parameters and things like, yes, quorum requirements are one of those. The decay rate of reputation is another one that we're not, we might have to tweak. And so when we set the quorum requirements, the one thing we wanted to make sure is we wanted to make it harder and harder and harder to escalate things up. And that is because that's expensive, it's taxing for people, and it's against this whole making things easy to get done. That aspect is in there, but the exact numbers are, on some level we made them up. Finger in the air, that's how we're going to start.
So I think it's a very interesting concept, but I think if I've understood correctly, the governance idea represents this, some of the stakeholders in the ecosystem, but as the project within a colony develops, how are the users represented, or something maybe more vulnerable players in the ecosystem that come up, depending on the project, obviously, but there are possibly more stakeholders to consider within a governance framework.
Well, so within a colony, the colony is controlled by the people who do work for the colony, right? Anyone else who's a client or a customer, that's an outside party. So their influence is indirect. So what we didn't want to do is we didn't want to recreate just like a shareholder capitalism where you can buy your influence. So we didn't want everything to be token weighted. That's where this whole reputation idea is what's built on. Having said that, of course, it's when you come in and you're doing your first little task, you have almost no protections against abuse from others. And even later, when you only have a little bit, the others can cheat you, but only once. And I mean, colonies, when they work well, they should have like a reputation in a human sense of doing things well. It's like there's many levels to this discussion. But there are some protections. So for example, if you don't have enough reputation yourself to force a vote on something, you can try to crowdfund it. You can try to say, hey, I think this is wrong, can you help me? And then people can jump in to support your claim, and if you're right, they will get rewarded just as you would. So those are considerations are definitely there. I don't know what you mean by other players. So that
So as I understand it now, the reputation, basically it's developers that gain influence, or people who are contributing to the ecosystem gain influence.
No, I don't want you to think that this is like all developers. Developers, I use this as an example because we're developers, and this is how our company.
So contributions can be in any sense, basically.
A task might be to pick up trash at a Thai beach, and your proof that you've done it is a photo of the clean beach, and a person, surfer who goes by there later can be the guy who says, "Yep, it's clean," and accepts, and then you earn reputation within. So this is very, very generic, this pattern. So yeah, you should be able to run any kind of project on Colony. So yes, we have development is one of the ideas we always have because that's what we're doing, so it's easy to think about. Another one, interestingly, that came up early is design agencies. They're used to farming out task-based work to a lot of people and accepting the work digitally online. It's also very easy to do it online because there's no interaction with the physical world. But ultimately, yes, it should be, it should be generic enough to, allow anyone to join in. And then the other nice thing about the way this reputation system works, that if you do find a project that you like, and you start contributing, and you start working for them and with them and using them, then after some amount of time, you are indistinguishable from someone who's been there all along. You are a member of this colony, and you can start taking control, and you have influence, and you can change the direction. Like, it's really those people who put in the most work, and as long as the work is accepted by their peers, they will start having influence, and they can start pushing, governing. So it's a very dynamic process. And people who leave a colony, who stop doing work, well, their reputation decays away, and they can't come in later and try to change things that they don't like because it's no longer theirs. It belongs to whoever's doing the work.
I think we have to call it there.
All right.
Thank you very much, everyone. We've seen a recurring theme of Thai beaches coming through this conference as well now. This is good. I think I'm on board with this. This is